Всем привет.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sergey, and I'm going to talk to you about non-standard use of Jmeter. Not the standard, but some additional. I work in software development for more than 10 years, and the testing environment I've been working for 5 years. I work in both API and different protocols, GMS, JDBC. And when I'm allowed to use any stack, I use the GM stack. I used Jmeter, Postman, Gets and Postman, TCP dump and others.
Я расскажу про Jmeter, про том, как мы его готовим.
I'll tell you about Jmeter and how we prepare it. This is my plan. Tell me who uses Jmeter. So some of you will not find it new to you, and those who uses it not for the load. Who uses Postman? Great. Oh, here's the plan. I'll now show you the basic description of Jmeter. Do a small integration test that will check a big chain, and then look at the possibilities of using Jmeter, other scenarios of use, and the teamwork. I hope that after my report you will leave this room with understanding of new features. You will be able to launch the mock server, you will be able to launch the SCH commands, and so on. You will increase the effectiveness of your productivity of your team if you're already using the Jmeter, or if you use it, start using it, and getting a certain advantage from it. What is a Jmeter? I can see here a Swiss knife on the screen. What it's all about? Jmeter is a tool to test productivity, as we know. You can see from the description on their website. It's used to load a system, check the metrics, and see how it behaves, make conclusion, do configuration, volume testing, and perform some other productivity tests. But its architecture allows to use it for other cases, but that we will discuss today. Just like Swiss knife components, each handle that Jmeter provides is not the best there is. So clearly, the saw in Swiss army knife is not as great as the similar tool used independently. So, but Jmeter was first released in December 1998. This is how its interface looks. On the left you can see standard menu, and on the right you can see the description of the components. All the Jmeter components have their own icon, which shows that what this component is doing at the moment. And the red arrow shows that this component works before and doing something for our sampler. And the glass, magnifying glass, puts it in a different category. These are main components that we need to understand what the system does. This is a big integration system that works with the logs and traces, but provides a concrete chain. Oh great, thank you very much. Now we can see much better. We're sending logs. Our task is to send the logs to the Elasticsearch teams. Who knows what Kibana is? So Kibana is the UI for logs. Elasticsearch is the source where they come from. Our task is to get this information to the client. Kafka is needed to keep the data, store the data if the storage is not available. We have a huge cluster, 5 petabytes, I think, and it can simply malfunction when we service this. Hence, we need a temporary storage. Our task is to make a test that checks every part of the chain. At the first, we add a thread group, since it's not a loading test. We just put one everywhere. At the second stage, we add a sampler. See how many samplers we each in the HTTP request, which is the most popular one. I cannot be sure, but I think this is the most popular request. This is how our request looks like. Say that we'll send this request, and lower you can see the head, so the body of the request with all the GUIs and scripts. To see the results, we add result 3. So the first step, we simply make a request to our adapter, and then get 200 OKs, and we see that everything reached destination. The simple test allows us to get logs. It is this that allows us to fill in the database. Nobody is going to look into the Elastic every time they want to check something. It simply adds additional request. We'll be looking for it using the timestamp, as you can see in the right hand corner. JSON that comes back as the following structure. You can see that it will, irrespective of the field, it will. It's better to take a unique field, but you can see a magnifying glass component. Well, we'll check that in the node we have the necessary data. We receive a response, which is green, which means the assertion works very well. As you can see, we have more than one script here. Who can say where the problem is? The problem is that we send a request, a get response, and the samples, they accumulate. What can we do to prevent this? We need to read it and clean it. No, we can't do it because they're stored in the in Elastic part. No, so we cannot actually do anything but filter it. What if we filter it? We send in the same request and they accumulate. We must get the same reply. What do we do then? We'll add a variable that will be unique every time. We'll make our request unique. This is where our Jmeter is customized. Using the Groovy language, we send a request, some sort of standard for JPython, JRuby, JJava, Kotlin, Scala, Groovy languages. Means that you can write the language or use the language to write a script. We will be using the script in the log, and this will be a record with a real time. We put a value that we have calculated previously. Those of you who work with Postman, do you use variables? When I asked you about Postman, there was a lot of raised hands, unlike this case. Environment as well. We have similar elements here. I would say it rather reminds me that Postman inherited those things. Okay, what's a variable? Well, it's clear. We put a variable that is replaced with a value. Replacement happens at one point. Is marked with $1 and 2.
Функция отличается от переменной тем, что она каждый раз высчитывается при выполнении. То есть каждый раз, когда вы
it's separated on both parts.
В любом месте
the two braces.
Она будет давать новое значение.
Every time it gives a new value. Apart from GUIs, the number of other functions probably has some real-time GUD replaces and other things.
Вот мы ее вставили в запрос, чтобы прочитать. То есть мы сначала отправили запрос с таймстемпом, а потом...
So we send a request, and we see that our request has been sent, that it has been generated.
Ответ не прочитался. Почему он не прочитался? Ну,
and the reply was not read. Why wasn't it read? Because it means that we sent a unique record. It also happens because the system is actually simultaneous or synchronous, and it's difficult to do a request that will be executed immediately in such a system. We'll simply add a timer for 2 seconds. I simply know that request happens once in a second, so 2 seconds will be enough. We know that doing thread sleep is bad, but we will do it for the example. Just for it. So the log was read, we received the data. Made a scenario, and the changes are unique. The next step is when we launched the scenario today, but the scenario won't work tomorrow. Something went wrong. We know that it's actually this scenario usually works, but not tomorrow. It's a big chain, and it can break in any place. We need to localize the problem. An adapter, Sync or Kafka can break down any component, can fail. So we'll add another component, Kafka, stores in messages, which they all have numbers. We add a new one, and the number grows. So we need to calculate the sum and understand how many messages we already have. When we send a new one, we calculate it and understand whether we need to change it. What we do we deal with the start offset and get end offset. Why are we using this code? There are plugins to work with the Kafka, but for our particular purpose, we don't have an ad hoc bespoke plugin. But we understood that we can read the offset this way. We first read it and calculated it, and then said that you simply put together these offsets, and then we took the last offset and compared them. If they're not identical, it's an error. If the number didn't grow, it means that the message did not reach Kafka. If it did, then it's the next one after Kafka. If it doesn't work here, then Kafka is down. It actually happens sometimes. the error remains there. What do we do? We have the last component, which is daemon. We cannot touch it. It's a daemon on Linux, which is launched through system ITL, and it has no handles you can touch upon the console. So we can execute the SH request. For this, we need to use the plugins in Jmeter. You can see the Jmeter supported in the plugins. They need to be placed in a special folder. Now we have a special manager. If you can also even write Selenium test because there's such a component, but I wouldn't recommend this if you like yourself. But as an experiment or as a small step test, as a step a certain task, it is possible. We're interested in the SH protocol, and we have this team SSH protocol. We execute the following command. We calculate the status and brings the result with an error. Something went wrong. The server didn't work well enough. Didn't deploy. It's not the best example. It's the best example of us being able to execute long-distance SSH commands.
Someone told me about environments. We also have such a point. We created test in one environment and then moved to other environments, staging, cloud, and we have different names. We are not going to retype the variables all the time. We'll just take such a setting component from above, we'll copy it and create variables where we will write down our host and other data. And to do the test in another environment, we'll simply switch between them. If you want to do it from the console, you have manipulations with properties. They exist, and we are not going to speak about it in detail now. All right, so we take our inquiry, we write down our variables, and we perform tests in various environments. Another component, Jmeter opportunities are created by logic controllers. There are cycles, there are for eaches, there are a lot of controllers. With the help of one of them, we'll do a test that tests several touches. Not one. The first four controllers are great. It's useful to read about them in tutorials. They cover a lot of interesting cases. And it would be great to check all of them. Our service is deployed in several drivers. When we speak about variables, we say that they are going to iterate for each component. And we say that variables are called host, and they perform what is shown in the left. This thing will repeat as many times as many variables you have with the same name. Here we replace them in two places. We have two inquiries in various hosts. Once I hurried up and I wrote down a code. It's great when you write down the code and it works, but it's very expensive, and my colleagues didn't understand me because it was too difficult. When we replace it with this, it's easier because it's transparent, it's preset, and it's easy. So here's our scenario. It works at various environments with various services. We can change the workability of a chain in any place. This is how my real scenario looks like. There are a lot of various components. There is a test that we performed. There are other components to check various features. Doing inquiry once, you can have several inquiries. The advantage of it is that if an inquiry is good, you can work more with it. But this is how my desktop actually looks like. The tests look in the left and in the right. I change the host. For example, if you want to check how your test looks like if you switch off something in one test, you change functions, and in other desktop you can change between the keepers. It's a real scenario, something we are working on right now, and there are other scenarios that we worked on, namely mock services, system monitoring, Java code launch. We can integrate it from the integration system, and there are also tests from Swagger and OpenAP. We know that you can launch a Jmeter custom decode, which means that you can launch a mock server from via mock and press buttons in our instrument, and our inquiries will be mocked. Several years ago, I did it differently. I performed this task differently, then I found a good framework from Scala. I used to do it like that. Now I understand the fastest way is to do this Jmeter scenario. You launch it quickly, it doesn't require any additional costs, it takes just 1 minute. The only thing is that you need to restart the Jmeter because it starts as a backdrop. I use this method and I like it. There is no problem for me to write a mock server at any language, and here is how we launch it. Here are our inquiries, and these are the responses we receive. Monitoring with Zabbix. In the past, I did screenshots in the 4th version. Now we have the 5th one. One of the specific features, and we are going to talk about it later. Let's say you have a monitoring. What does monitoring mean? Monitoring is when you monitor your system. If it works properly and you send the metrics to the system, they process them and makes alerts or conclusions. Zabbix is a system to where you can send the information about the service, and let's say if the time is too long, then send an email. We have a scenario. You record the time of implementation. You add a sampler, which is performed in the operation system console, and say, Zabbix Center, please send these metrics. It's a real thing. It works. Perhaps it doesn't work anymore, but it used to work for many years, and when the service died, we knew about it 1 minute later. Of course, there are other ways to inform people, but it was useful for us because we had scenarios. We had Jmeter scenario, we improved it, added one more step, and we didn't do anything else. What are our integrations? Here is a graphic interface, but there is also a console integration. When you start at Jmeter, it tells you, launch me from the console. You can see it there, literally. Because if you do the workload, the console uses less resources and works better. But we're interested in functional tests. That's why we start certain commands. We generate a new report, and here are the conclusions. In the report, we see that there are mistakes. If something goes wrong, the errors will be in the report. But the scenario is implemented, and the system might say that everything is fine, and the outcome code is 0. This is how our report looks like. We started a test. There were several steps, and some of them didn't work. To understand quickly that something went wrong, you don't need any plugins or codes. You can work in TeamCity, Jenkins, or Bamboo. Maybe it's different there, but the idea is simple. If such a line doesn't work, and you see this picture, sometimes test goes, sometimes now you deploy the system, you start the test, and you see that the system works or not. It's the same test we performed at the very beginning. And if you go there, you see where it broke down because it is so detailed. Okay. We go further. Code launch. we can launch Java code in Jmeter. This code is a Scala code. I started it from Coastal, but I wanted to start it from Jmeter because I wanted to check it in workload. I just launched it and fat jar and put it into the file. There is a system to create a fat jar. So your jar is in the file and you can refer to it from the code. No imports, no packages, just for you as an example. In reality, you need some imports or you need to write down the package. It generates wait receive and it writes down in the file. And then it reuses it in other places. Who knows what OpenAP is and Swagger? Okay. To bring your skills to another level, check what it is. It's a super cool thing. There was a time when it changed my mindset about API. It's a standard that helps you describe your API for other users or vice versa, receive descriptions from other users and work with them. One of them is export to Jmeter. You can take API description and create an API test out of it. Swagger was made by SmartBeat and promoted by it. Now it's an open source. It has a great interface, editor Swagger, and OpenAPI is there. There are a lot of great things there. It's really cool. We are interested in two files, CSV and JMX. JMX file is the file of test. You can see a lot of things here, various steps, reading, variables. This example can help you find out about tricks of Jmeter. Such tricks is this feature. You can take out the default value. Here is a CSV file and test cases. You add lines and you generate a lot of test cases. Great example. Then they are transformed into inquiries. What else do I work with? I won't show you an example, but we work with file reading and recording for testing or for databases. We use JDBC. JDBC is when you work with databases, and GMS MQP is the work with queues. When you work with HTTP, you can send the information in any way from consoles. When you work with these things, it's more difficult. It's more difficult to send a GMS inquiry. You need to use additional instruments or Jmeter. Specific features that are pleasant. It's a Java application, cross-platform. You can start it from any computer where Java can employ it. For example, I used it Banana Pie. It was funny, it was useless, but I liked it. In reality, it means that you can use it at any server. Setting and copying. It has everything needed. If you need to give it to someone, you just give the file and the scenario file. If you have a situation that the test doesn't start, simply because there is no access to repositories because of certain events with limitations, it doesn't happen here. You have a file or you don't. Some tests and some languages didn't start in my case simply because I had to search for the old computer with other languages. In this case, it all starts with a scenario to someone. For example, we had to create a file generator for analytics. You could use PowerShell, writing a script, but it doesn't mean that it will start at another person's computer.
А можно,
Or
ну там CMD, понятно, bash, а можно
you can
сделать
use the
папку с
CMD,
Jmeter
bash,
или
or
Unix
make a
файл и сделать
Jmeter
батник.
file
После запуска батника мы просто сразу
and
закрываем сценарий. То есть
create
от пользователя
this
этой штуки нужно
scenario.
просто нажать батник. Ну и
The
потом
only
сценарий.
thing that your partner needs is simply to push the
Это
button.
еще такая штука.
Test
Интересная,
fragment
когда
is another
вы можете
interesting thing.
улучшить свою работу с
When
Jmeter,
you
не
can
меняя весь
improve your
сценарий,
work
а
with
меняя
Jmeter,
отдельные
not
кусочки,
change the
которые
whole
потом
scenario,
ссылаются
but
в
change in
сценарий.
small
Вы
fragments
можете
that
взять
the scenario
маленький
refers to
кусочек,
later on.
экспортировать
You
его
can
в
take a
тест
small
фрагмент,
fragment,
и потом
export a
вставить в
test,
другой сценарий.
and
И
then
ссылку сделать.
import it to another scenario. It works like a link.
Пожалуйста, запустились.
Once again,
Тут нет ни одного запроса, но
there are
что-то
no
выполнилось.
inquiries here, but something was performed because it was taken from another file. You change one file and you don't have to change other links. Three different scenarios here, for example.
Но выполнилось несколько раз.
No inquiries, but it was performed several times.
Очень удобная штука.
Dummy
Получается,
sampler.
если у вас
Very
много
good.
тестов,
If you
которые
have a lot
делают
of
одно и то
tests
же,
that do the same
а вы
things,
хотите их поменять, вы
and
просто
you
меняете
want to
ссылку,
change
ну,
them, you
значение
just
вот
change
базового вот
the
этого.
value of the basic test.
Хорошо. Командная
Good.
работа.
Teamwork.
Есть конкретный кейс, когда
There's a
делали
case
систему большую,
when we
в которой-
developed
в
a
создании
big
которой
system.
участвовало несколько десятков
Several
человек. Это
dozens
аналитики,
people
разработчики,
participated
тестировщики,
in the project. Testers, analytics, developers, designers, and so on. We had so many tests. 262 Jmeter files and 5,337 test cases in XML. I know for sure because these are XML files that were sent. It was very difficult to come to terms how to make Jmeter files correctly. You cannot merge them. That's why we did test cases in XML and sent XMLs. It was very convenient. The only thing is to create the rules, how to merge everything, how to use the kit. People get used to it quickly, and it's really great. It's good for front-ender to add the content. Analytics can use it for their own tasks. Testers were creating only frames and so on. What are about minuses, disadvantages and problems? It's an HTML file, so it's difficult to develop a scenario. As for GIT, you also have some problems with it. It's difficult to merge changes. The variables are lines. We do it with the help of inscriptions in the file. It's not convenient to work with binary HTTP protocols. For some cases, you need to understand the limitations of GVM, the differences between GVK and GVM. It's not really a problem, but sometimes you need to Google it. What is really bad is that Ctrl-Z doesn't work. In the past it didn't work at all, so if you forgot about something you can forget about it. But if you go to bin, there is a backup file and sometimes it can save your life because the last 10 launches of scenario are saved. And my personal headache is that I like Scala, but it compiles for a long time. You have to do a lot of imports. It works really badly. If you use Jmeter, these are the tricks that can make your life easier. If you don't use them for now, it might be interesting for you. Let's talk about it. It's an universal instrument. It has a lot of features, but perhaps for your purposes it's not good. For example, you have a set of instruments, drill, screwdriver, various types of screwdrivers, and you use various instruments for various purposes. Same here. If you need to do a lot of inquiries, you can use Postman. If you need to work with difficult and big scenarios, Jmeter will be good for you. And if these scenarios have various protocols, JDBC, GMS, and something else, then it will be perfect. So you are professionals, and you can assess the costs of using the instrument, how much it costs to get familiar with it and to use it. Then you take decision if you use it or not on the basis of all the information shared with you. Okay, I feel like a cat on the picture, because we have a lot of interesting cases with Jmeter. We have a lot of cases with workload and limitations, a variable transition and so on, but we are limited in time, so if you have questions, you can ask these questions to me either now or after the presentation. I want to fit into the box, but I cannot. That's it I wanted to tell you. Please choose the instruments wisely, and I hope that my presentation will help you expand your knowledge about the instruments. May I say something? We have two prizes, one for a beautiful guy, one for a clever guy. It's a book and it's a t-shirt, and I would like to use my opportunity to give these presents. Please ask your questions. Thanks for your presentation. I had a lot of useful information. Recently, I created an integrated testing. I chose Postman because there were a lot of inquiries, but when I came to the step of file launching, my inquiry was declined. I tried different ways, coding B64 coding. I did it in Jmeter at the end of the day, and there it worked fine. But you work with Postman, right? Maybe you know how to load the files in Flow. I hope you know. I work quite a lot with Postman. Frankly speaking, I don't see any meaning to download the Jmeter simply to send a short inquiry. You can write down to me and I'll try to help you. Okay, thank you. Thank you for your presentation, it was interesting. My question, have you tried to use Jmeter for the purpose that it was developed to? And did you have any significant tests? Have you tried to use it as necessary for the right reason? Okay, we write 160,000 logs per second. I'm speaking about Contours, an organization which secures business processes of many entrepreneurs. Figures are great sometimes. We just have problems with our network. Workload is just one part of my work. I use Jmeter for other things. I can tell you about it later, but my presentation was about a different thing. I use Jmeter to use incoming workload tests to see if there is a difference or not. If you need to use a lot of workload, then you use Jmeter, because sometimes it's not correct to use only one instrument. Several instruments can give you different results and different mistakes and errors. They connect differently. They use different drivers. They use differentiated launchers, and so on. You can use metrics, and I could talk about it forever, but I just don't have time for it right now.
I have a question. I also tried using Jmeter, not for its original purpose. Why? Because sometimes you have this tool in hand to complete a task. It seems that all the work that you demonstrated to us is something big. It's not some local checks here and now. And how does this experience is this experience used in the CI?
Просто сделаем большой тест,
So we
мы
make a small test scenario
и запускаем в CI.
and
Из
check it
этого
after
теста
deployment.
берем,
We
допустим,
put
прошлое.
parts of this test
К примеру, проверить, как у
in
нас
order to
индекс эластики
check how our
держится.
elastic
Просто
index
берем первый шаг
can
теста,
withstand
делаем
a certain number of requests.
делая его там определенное количество раз. То есть там
We
есть два случая,
run it a
которые
number of
реализовывать.
times.
Просто
There
делаем
are
большую
basic
нагрузку,
steps. We use them to make
большие штуки. То есть,
load
когда
and monitor them when we already have the test. So if I understood it correctly, this test is a test of the infrastructure of how logs function. It's not the testing of the product itself.
вот конкретно мой пример, да,
In my case, yes, it's about a structure. My second example was about business logics. We had tests when we send the files to the systems and we received
всё, и это было ровно в том Jmeter, ровно
reply from the system and checked it
участники, чтобы не только
for consistency, so that not only programmer who wrote the code in this language, if the guys writing a program in C#,
поплюхаться за MS-билдером, потому что
I cannot simply check his work.
в Jmeter сделать просто это всё.
I go to Jmeter without further ado.
Спасибо за доклад.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I want to clarify something. I saw the plugins. Most important thing is
Исходящий трафик.
when working with Jmeter is working with outflowing traffic, outgoing traffic. I saw a plugin that collects, makes a separate scenario out of it. My question is, what if we're not talking about HTTP? I work with WebSocket, which is a real-time connection with requests coming to and from. Can Jmeter support sessions in this format? I may be wrong, but I think they added in the latest version either plugin or
Я видел реализацию.
this. I saw the protocol, its implementation, and the list of plugins.
Авторизоваться и
It can get authorized, and then I don't think I will be able to
я должен был попробовать.
answer this question.
Я не хочу вас как бы обманывать.
So I don't want to
Я
say
я посмотрю, как
I would like to. I didn't check. I need to look it up. How it's done in the Jmeter. Gatling it is done. So I'm not going to lie to. I'm sorry.
То есть можно, да? Можно скромный вопрос? Если про этот целый доклад точно, это просто...
So it's easy to do. So last question, please. Hi. You told us a lot about the functional testing in using Jmeter. I know the company like Smart, they have a project called DIP. Many of your approaches are used by them as well. I don't know if you heard about them. Why did you choose Jmeter as not the best, most the obvious example? So PUI, we did use it, but we didn't like it. It is too saturated. It is sophisticated. It has open and windows. Although the functionality there is on a good level, you can work with JDBC. You can put together Jmeter. I'm not saying, nobody's saying these are unique things, because I saw in your presentations that all the functions are present only in the Jmeter. Of course, there's no single unique right for some functions. That's why I mentioned the Postman, which has the same features. There are some approaches in the testing utilities, and good approaches are cloned, which means that they're good. Some time ago, at some point we selected Jmeter as our tool, but there's a paid-for version that will be much more powerful and much more convenient to use. Well, it's not an advertising, but why did you choose Jmeter? Well, Jmeter is our basic tool for work. We work with Jmeter, but sometimes they want to do something else. We launched load and test in Jmeter, but sometimes I want to touch the sensors. I want to do it in the same window without switching between consoles. I just want to do it in one window, and this is very convenient.
По-другому как-то. Всё?
That's it. Yeah.
Что ловите Сережу в кулуарах?
Well, if you have some more questions, ask Sergey in the corridor. We'll give a T-shirt to this girl.
Я так хочу, извините.
That's what I want. I'm sorry.
Не знаю, я
I
надеялся, что кто-нибудь
I was
спросит
hoping
вас про то, используем ли Jmeter по-нормальному.
somebody would ask a question why we're not using Jmeter in the proper way.
Потому что это выглядит так,
Because it looks like we are
я почему делаю это.
doing something strange.
Ладно, спасибо вам.
Thank you very much, guys.